Ole Miss has a better chance to make the college football playoffs next season than Alabama or Texas. I'll explain.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast around. I am your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today's show, we talk about Ole Miss spring practice, where Lane Kiffin could not help but talk up the passing game and the wide receiver group multiple times, leading me to believe that Austin Simmons and that group of skill players, they are just a good defense away from winning 10 games. And if they are, those pieces are in place. When you look at that and take a look at Alabama and Texas and LSU and South Carolina's schedule, Ole Miss is absolutely a playoff contender if they can solve that one real issue. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to our insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC and Corey Burton and Locked On Vandy offer even more perspectives on college football, the SEC, and yes, even Ole Miss. So I started looking at schedules, and everybody has questions on their team right now. There is not a non-flawed football team in the Southeastern Conference for 2025. Everybody has an issue that they have to fix. I do not know who is going to get that issue fixed, but I do know that right now there are issues that each and every single team in the SEC has to fix if they want to make a run to anything resembling 10 games and 10 wins. And that is the benchmark for making the college football playoff, in my opinion. That's 10 wins. And when you look at some of the teams that are out there in the SEC, the favorites, though to say, whenever you look at rankings and things like that, you're always going to see Texas. I've seen Texas as number one in the country. I think Texas is on 7-5 alert next season with the way their schedule matches up, with the fact that they lost their quarterback, every single wide receiver, and their offensive line. Yes, they're going to have a really good defense that could be problematic, but they have to put some pieces together offensively that also could be problematic. Alabama, they're missing the most important piece of them all. And nobody is really sure who is going to take the reins next. There's going to be an open competition. And we have seen with like Cooper Pratt and other quarterbacks at Alabama, sometimes weird decisions get made. So we'll see with that on top of the schedule that they have. South Carolina has a hard schedule. LSU has a really hard schedule. These are basically four of the favorites in the Southeastern Conference. Georgia's up there. Georgia's always up there. And Georgia has Texas, Alabama, and Ole Miss on their schedule as well. Now, they're all at home this year, but they have them all on there. The point of this is that every playoff favorite team in the SEC has a legitimate path to not make the playoffs. And in some case, they have more of a path to not make the playoffs than others. And I'll explain what I mean. This is the Texas Longhorns football schedule for 2025. They open on the road at Ohio State. That's who they just lost to, 28-14. They open at Ohio State. You don't think that Ohio State's going to be jacked up for that game? Texas might win that game, but they very well, not a single person watching this video would be surprised if Texas lost that game at Ohio State. At Florida Gators, they have a chance to be good. Playing in the swamp is difficult. Ole Miss fans can attest to that. Oklahoma, you cannot count on multiple back-to-back wins by Texas Oklahoma over Oklahoma ever. They always jump up and seem to get them. Vanderbilt is going to be difficult. At Georgia, Texas A&M, they could legitimately go 7-5 in a worst-case scenario. I'm not even counting on like losing to Kentucky or Mississippi State or something like that. I'm just talking about games that they are going to be likely within a touchdown of the opponent one way or the other. I think Texas can legitimately lose 5 games this season. They're going to be the preseason number 1, and everybody is going to root about Arch Manning and talk about how good they could be with Arch Manning but this schedule is sitting out in front, and it's just landmine on top of landmine on top of landmine, especially that middle at Florida, Oklahoma is there, and then Georgia, Texas A&M, and then Arkansas. Always watch out for Arkansas against Texas because there's a chance they could be very good. They're not the only ones with an absolutely brutal schedule. Alabama has one as well that they have to worry about. They have to go to Florida State to open the season. And after the Oklahoma game last season, is anybody just banking on the fact that Alabama is going to roll Florida State? They might win the game, but it's going to be interesting. Wisconsin plays at Alabama. That's another game that could be weird. They go to Georgia. They play Vanderbilt. They are at Missouri. They play Tennessee, and they are at South Carolina. Their October stretch is incredibly hard. And then they're LSU, Oklahoma, and at the Auburn Tigers and Jordan-Hare. This could be another landmine filled season for the Alabama Crimson Tide. They're one of the playoff favorites to go in. This is what I mean by Ole Miss has an advantage over these teams. And then you look at LSU. LSU opens the season at Clemson. They play Florida. They are at Ole Miss. They play South Carolina. They're at Vanderbilt. They play Texas A&M. They are at Alabama. And they are at Oklahoma. It is going to be a brutal schedule no matter who your favorite team and team of choice might be. Ole Miss, on the other hand, the way their schedule lines up, you have the end of September playing against LSU at home. Home game against LSU. And then you have an off week, Washington State, and then you have a 3-game set that is at Georgia, at Oklahoma, and South Carolina at home. You have a game against Florida at home. So you can see that the landmines aren't necessarily there. The 3 games schedule with Georgia, Oklahoma, and South Carolina, that is going to tell the tale on the season because 10 wins is a requirement to make the playoff. But if you look at the schedules that I put out there, Ole Miss is more likely to get 10 wins than Alabama. Ole Miss is more likely to get 10 wins than LSU. Ole Miss is more likely to get 10 wins than Texas. I think in the SEC in 2025, a team like Missouri has a chance to pop up. I don't know how good they're going to be, but their schedule is very favorable. Ole Miss has a favorable schedule as well. I think Oklahoma has a brutal schedule. They're going to be tough. Florida, a brutal schedule. Georgia has to face all of those teams in a row. They just get them at home. So Tennessee, they're up there. They have a mid schedule, but Tennessee and Missouri are the 2 programs that I would watch outside of Ole Miss for a chance to make a run in 2025. So that's what I mean by this. Ole Miss has a better chance of making the college football playoff than Texas or Alabama. I think Texas can legitimately be a 7-5 team, 8-4 type team. It's not even outside the realm of possibility, anything weird about that. That's not a hot take. That's not a cold take. That's just a take. When you look at their schedule and what's going on, you immediately look at Ohio State and Georgia. That's L's in the column, right, to start off with. And then you have the other games at Florida versus Oklahoma, Texas A&M. Lose one of those games, you're not in the college football playoff. And I think they're going to lose 1, maybe 2 of those games. I do think that Texas is on major 8-4 watch, which Texas A&M can really attest to as well. But it's all because of those skill players that Lane Kiffin is so excited about, especially the wide receivers. We've seen video film of just about everybody, Deuce Alexander, all of those guys really showing out for the Ole Miss football team. And because of that, that 2-game stretch, that win 2 out of 3 stretch in the middle of the season against Georgia, Oklahoma, and South Carolina, if you can get LSU, get Florida, you're going to the playoff, baby. That's just the way it is. So Lane Kiffin loves him some skill players, but he warns that the secondary has plenty of work to do. Which position group should fans really be watching? We will break that down next. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades supply house. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy to use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product information to get you help and get the job done right the first time. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros out there, if you're looking for an extra edge, their Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it is your turn. Join the Trade Master program at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. So Lane Kiffin kind of lit up a little bit when he started talking about the skill positions, especially the wide receiver unit. Whenever you look at the roster at Ole Miss, it makes sense. I am a firm believer of single-digit numbers tells you what the staff thinks of who they have. They do not give a number one to somebody that's never going to see the field. To get that number one, they at least have to have a high opinion of you when you're being recruited. Number one, Deshaun Stribling. Number two, Harrison Wallace. Number four, Caleb Odom. Number five, Kewan Lacey. Number seven, Traylon Ray, the wide receiver out of West Virginia as well. Tight end time, Daquan Wright, number 8. Luke Haas, number 9. Number 11, Deuce Alexander. This is what you mean, and this is how it looks with them stacking up skill position and wide receivers and tight ends with single-digit numbers. They're really fantastic and ready to go there. But if you look at defensive players in that same predicament right now, you have Sage Ryan, number 3. You have Suntaran Perkins, number 4. Number 5 is Cam Franklin. TJ Dottery is number 6. And that's it. That is all the defensive players in the top 10 on the roster. And that tells you something. That lets you know that they're kind of sure. They think they know. They're almost there. When you look at coaches and evaluation, they are still evaluating players. They have players that they think can play at this level. They do not have players that they know can play at this level. And whenever you look at, say, Kapina Gushikin, the defensive back safety out of Washington State that transferred in, he's a Hawaii guy. He's a guy that you haven't heard his name much of any time during spring football. That's a problem. That's a problem. And Lane Kiffin brought up on his own that the defensive back room has some work that they need to get done before the fall. They're just not quite there. So what we're looking at is potentially a transfer portal, a palooza of defensive back players in the spring transfer portal window, or some of these young guys have to take a step. The Keon Youngs, the Cortez Thomases, the Ladarian Cardys, the Major, I forget his last name. I apologize about that. So we'll see exactly how that looks. MJ Preston, that's his name. So these young safeties that have a chance, and they have all the talent in the world to be a safety, they have to step up right now for Lane Kiffin to avoid Ole Miss going into the portal after spring practice. And honestly, at this point, we're 3 weeks into spring and a 5-week spring. I don't know if that can happen. Ole Miss had a scrimmage on Saturday. Nobody was in the scrimmage. It was a closed scrimmage. The only thing we have is that the star of the scrimmage was Austin Simmons. He had a long touchdown run, and he was very good in the air, but that's a double-edged sword. When a team is moving the ball through the air, that's great for the wide receivers and quarterback. That is not great for the secondary and what they're doing. And Lane Kiffin talked about most of these guys should be seniors in high school that's shown up in camp. The Ladarian Cardys, those guys sitting on campus, they should be seniors in high school. They're just trying to pick up calls and not trying to just pick up calls and execute and go through that. They're still learning. They're swimming. And these young guys absolutely have the ability to take a step for Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels in the fall. But in case they don't, I imagine that Ole Miss is going to hit the transfer portal pretty hard. What do we know about the defense right now? What do we know about what Pete Golding is putting out there? I know it's going to be a good unit. And with as good as the offense has a chance to be, the skill players have a chance to be, they just need a good unit. They don't need last year's defense. They just need a good unit. They need Prince Will Amonmi-Ellen, who was talked about in the press conference as being a different type football player than Princely Amonmi-Ellen. He's more of a run stopper than a pass rusher. This makes sense. Brothers are going to be different. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. Kiffin made a joke about it's natural to compare them because they're only different by a couple of letters. But they're different style football players. And that makes me wonder if Prince Will Amonmi-Ellen, he's not more of the Jared Ivey type in that front seven. And I think that front seven is going to be fine when it's all said and done. The linebackers right now are swimming. They just are. They're swimming right now. Todd Chambers and Andrew Jones. They're actually, what's his name? Real quick. Tyler Banks out of Blackstone, Virginia, is actually playing a good bit at linebacker right now and is stepping in the absence of TJ Dottery. He's up to 245 pounds running around. If he makes plays and does the things he has to do, he takes a little bit of pressure off Jaden Yates and Taj Chambers and Andrew Jones to pick everything up because you have a starting group of TJ Dottery and Tyler Banks. But I do think that as the swimming slows down a little bit, you're going to see Andrew Jones. You're going to see Taj Chambers. You're going to see those guys take a step. They're just learning right now. Everybody's kind of feeling out each other. Another thing we figured out is Sage Ryan's playing some free safety. He's played a lot of corner. He played some slot corner. I think he played some box safety at LSU. He's playing some true free safety. He is the guy that's been earmarked to be the Trey Washington replacement, the A.J. Finley replacement in the back of the defense. And he's played a lot of football. He's athletic as heck. So I think he's in a good spot for there. I think that was a good find by Pete Golding. Now, the cornerback position, there's not a Trey Amos right now that we know of in the room. It could be Mason Dunn. It could be Patrick Broomfield, two young guys that have been recruited, have been developed. Maybe they're ready to take a step. I mean, Mason Dunn at 6'3", 6'4". That's a heck of a cornerback option. You have Chris Graves, a former top 100 recruit. There's some pieces in the back of that room. They're just young. They're just inexperienced. And right now, I guarantee you, they're sitting out on the practice field, and every play that they put on, a different player is busting coverage. That is the way this works. When they're watching video or practice, each and every single time, somebody is likely busting. That is making the offense look better than they probably are, and it's making the defense look worse than they probably are. But the good news is there's no spring game, I guess, and you have plenty of time until August 30th to get everything figured out. Having Sage Ryan kind of moving into that free safety, the quarterback of the defense, that's a pretty big deal. Whenever you have him and TJ Dottery, and in the middle of the defense, you have Xavion Harris, you have a nice spine of the defense to build around. That's the step. That's how you build. You build football defenses and football offenses from the inside out. Even on offense, you need a center, a quarterback, and a running back first, and then you can go from there. Same thing happens on defense. You need a nose guard, a linebacker, and a free safety to kind of play quarterback with the other players. Once you have that, you can have it all developed. And it's possible that could happen. So we'll see. The spring practice right now appears to be going pretty well. Lane Kiffin seemed pretty excited, especially about the offensive skill players. And with those guys, this wide receiver room is deeper than any wide receiver room that he's had at Ole Miss. Deuce Alexander is running around catching passes from A.J. Maddox, who's the backup quarterback, which means he's not running with the ones. Deuce Alexander's a speed guy from Wake Forest. He's a guy that can play. but he's going to have to fight for PT on this football team because of the Caleb Odoms, because of the Deshaun Striblings and the Harrison Wallaces, and because 12 personnel seems to be finding a more permanent niche in this offense when you have a Daquan Wright and a Luke Haas. And I've mentioned having Luke Haas and Daquan Wright on the field at the same time with Caleb Odom, you have the ability to go from 10 personnel to 13 personnel and everything in between, running an offense for each of those at tempo, which it means the team on defense cannot match up to what you're doing. That is the newest weapon, I do believe, with helmet communication, is changing personnel groupings and not allowing the other team to match up. You could come in there with 13 personnel and look, they could match up with a heavy set, and you can line up and run 10 personnel plays and just completely have the defense at a loss. We'll see exactly how that goes. I'm pretty fired up with what could happen. In our final segment, a young quarterback not named Austin Simmons is making waves this season. Who is it, and what does it mean for Ole Miss? We'll discuss it next. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. You see, Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you can just stop managing your money and start actually building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on food deliveries. Now I budget smarter, save a little bit more money. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch Money to check your finances, track spending, and even long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's Monarch Money, code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, all one word, for half off your first year.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, we're back for one last segment on the show. I hope everybody is having an excellent Wednesday. It's hump day. We are 2 weeks away from me getting my head drilled open and then letting me know if there's anything inside there at all. I'll let you know whenever I find out as well. Just so everybody knows, starting the 14th, so the 14th, the 16th, and the 18th, for 4 weeks at a minimum, Brian Smith is going to be doing basically an Ole Miss version of a recruiting show and handling this podcast. So we're pretty fired up about that. I wanted everybody to have something they would be interested in. I figured recruiting at that time, since official visit season is about to kick off, would be really good for Ole Miss right then. Tuesdays, you will have me in an evergreen show that I'm basically recording during the off times here. And it's going to be why I hate videos, like why I hate Kentucky, why I hate Arkansas. Going into all 8 SEC programs, that should cover us between 1 and 2 months if I am out. So that is the purpose behind that. And the Locked On SEC host said that they were willing to do a show as well. So that would be Thursday. So that first week, the 14th, or the 15th, the 15th and the 17th will be both why I hate episodes. So if you're interested in all this and if you want to make a difference, if you want to do something, our subtext link is down in the description. It is inactive right now, but everybody that subscribes to that subtext is $5 a month, and I get 100% of the proceeds. So if you're interested in doing something, I'm doing that in lieu of a GoFundMe. So if you sign up, we'll have that. And during football season, we use the heck out of it. You can understand and see everybody that uses it, get an idea of what's going on. as well. Also, watch the videos on the site, no matter who is broadcasting, whether it be Brian, me, or the Locked On SEC folks. Watch those videos, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast channel, all of that stuff. Leave a comment, plenty of engagement, and we would appreciate it very much. Thank you very much for everything you do. We have to say it over and over again because people watch about 3 episodes on average per month. So we have to make sure for the maximum amount of coverage that we just basically keep saying it. I do appreciate your patience on all this and everything. So Ole Miss is pretty set at the quarterback position. Everybody knows about Austin Simmons, and everybody knows how I feel about Austin Simmons as a quarterback. And Ole Miss has been recruiting. They have recruited Pierce Clarkson, which honestly, at this point, I have heard nothing about Pierce Clarkson other than a potential, hey, he was at practice type deal, I think. But AJ Maddox is the quarterback that's kind of making waves and has probably the leg up to be the backup quarterback right now. You saw him in the early work. I think it was Ben Garrett from the Ole Miss Spirit put up a video of him throwing a pass to Deuce Alexander. But he is the guy that on the team probably has the strongest arm on the team. And that includes Austin Simmons, and he has a dang slingshot. So that is really cool. So you have Austin Simmons and AJ Maddox for a completely high school built quarterback battery that has a chance to be the leaders going into the fall. That's pretty cool. Whenever you look at all the transfer portal and the portal king stuff and all of that, if you look at Ole Miss's roster, you see 4-year colleges all over the place. And they recruit a lot of transfers. There's probably 50 transfers on this Ole Miss team. But there are not transfers on the important positions. That's the one thing you notice whenever you deep dive this roster. Quarterback, the top 2 high school players. Defensive line, all Mississippi. Now, Ole Miss has tried to supplement with like Prince Will, Amamiel, and Deshaun Womack, those guys, to go with the returning Akello Stone. But you still have Cam Franklin. You still have William Eccles. You still have Jeffrey Rush, Cam Franklin. I said that name already. You have those guys to lean on, and it's going to help you recruit the next batch of those guys. I told you I spoke with Deuce Geralds at the Under Armour All-American game. Unbelievably nice kid. Great kid. I asked him flat out, what do you need to see before you commit to the Ole Miss Rebels? Just asked him. And he said he needs to see that Ole Miss will play high school players. Which tells you that Ohio State's negative recruiting Ole Miss with that. Miami is negative recruiting Ole Miss with that. Florida State's negative recruiting Ole Miss. Auburn is negative recruiting Ole Miss on that fact. But this is going to be the biggest backfire season of all time, potentially. Was Ole Miss could possibly have a starting 4 of high school players, showing that Ole Miss will play high school recruits, which, if we're going to be honest, they do. Sontaran Perkins is probably the star of the defense, and he is a high school recruit as well. Should be pretty interesting. It's kind of interesting that AJ Maddox is the guy that is kind of getting some pub above Pierce Clarkson. I expected Pierce Clarkson to make at least a little bit of noise, but I have not heard much of anything from him. Pretty good stuff. So thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast out there. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. March is here, or actually April. So be the most informed college basketball fan throughout the madness. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.